Thank you, Raphael. Now we will take a couple of questions. First, we will take all the questions, and then both Radhika and Raphael will respond to the questions.
This is to both of you. I mean, I was just thinking when I was listening to both of you that one of the fundamental problems with, you know, thinking about climate change education as a transformative force in our location here is something that both of you pointed out in different ways. And particularly, I liked Radhika's title, feeling, you know, that word feeling in the title, because there is a way in which we completely marginalize uh, education that is kind of focused on helping people to understand, students to understand their feelings, etc., ethics and ethical behavior in social life, which is of course a way of understanding, you know, coming to terms with feelings and so on. It's a completely marginalized section of our education. In school, I remember we used to have something called moral science, which used to basically ask the most important questions in about living, you know, about social living. So, which of course also included, you know, how one dealt with emotions like, say, anger or greed or envy, etc., etc., desire. But these were treated, this was the worst taught, and it is still the worst taught. Now they've given it another name called life skills. Which is equally, and it's equally bad. The schools are allowed to choose random textbooks, some of which are completely preposterous in the way they treat, they talk down to children, you know, warn them, I don't know what all. So in a way, that part of humanity in children is damaged already, and that's probably one reason why why, you know, many teachers speaking here have pointed out that students are somehow not able to just take an interest, like Anu herself was pointing out. So probably this is where we are going seriously wrong in early childhood education and in the primary school. This part of education is treated with such contempt because there is no examination, or if at all there is an examination, it's a cursory one. So I suppose when we're talking about climate change education, we also need to think about how to actually offer intelligent conversations, you know, to evoke intelligent conversations about ethics and social living as a kind of ground preparation for you know, questions of climate change, etc., thought about in the transformative sense. Yeah, thank you.
I think such an important point. I just wanted to react to what ma'am just said right now. I think it's so important that we are not derogatory in a way, because here also in New Jersey, I see that environmental science taking the advanced program is like students who are in grade 11 and 12, they, if they are doing very well in a particular subject, they take an advanced program in that subject and they go faster. So I've heard that students who take advanced programs for environmental sciences are considered not that serious, but whereas AP chemistry and AP physics are much more serious. So, I mean, this is who's creating these trends, and why are we creating these false dichotomies which doesn't even exist, and it's like such a fake thing. I also want to bring up this idea that ma'am talked about moral education. This time at COP, I'm seeing a lot of like faith pavilion and faith-based education, and which are all linked to climate. So I think that's again something that I have seen evolve in terms of earlier. It was no, at least in the US, I had seen, oh no, which we are not going to talk about. Even UN agencies will not talk about faith as a way of like going about meeting your social obligations or social goals, because otherwise, which faith are you going to do, Buddhism or Christianity, and who will favor what? And I mean, this is again is such a, you take everyone's call and everyone is saying the same thing. You are trying to save your planet. So I feel that this time they had this pre-COP faith, based convention where all the world leaders were there discussing about how faith can be a lever to elevate discussions around climate, and can the education world also see faith as a way of asking these questions about what is it that we want to value in life, rather than just going about doing your math curriculum and your social science and your science curriculum. Something to think of as we go forward.
I was intrigued by that video. If you notice that video, which was shown during Sajiv's presentation, their science is projected as an antidote to superstition without any clarification. So one fears that even the best of our efforts to make science something that students truly enjoy, etc., might finally, the last analysis add up to this extremely highly instrumentalized, rationalized understanding of knowledge. I fear that.
So I don't know if there are a few other questions, but let me ask one question to both of you. I don't know if Rafael is at COP at Dubai, but I think you have colleagues there. So there is a session on education. What's the big deal? What's new? What's going to happen, or what has happened? Could you both tell us what we would like to know? We are discussing about climate change and education. This is the big conference, and just a few words on that from both of your perspectives, because the feeling we get is a lot of things are being talked up there. Not much is happening on the ground, right? Especially on education. I may be wrong, so tell us that. Second thing is, Radhika, to you is, you talked about the New Jersey curriculum and about how you did this very detailed analysis of socio-emotional learning aspects in that curriculum. One question that is there in everybody's mind here is that how do you integrate climate change into the curriculum without, again, overloading everything? And so perhaps you could give us an example or tell us how New Jersey has done it, or has it not done it? And to Rafael, I know you skipped over a couple of slides about what GPE is doing on knowledge sharing. India is not part of GPE, but is there something that we can participate in, we can benefit from? We are, after all, a large country, very climate, we vulnerable, and our state is especially so. As we are trying to develop a research agenda, is there something that GP can assist with, collaborate with, etc.? So 3 questions, one to both of you.
You want to go ahead, Rafael?
Yeah, sure. So at the COP, I think, for us at any rate, that was the opportunity, and we've been working quite a lot in the background of it for having education featured at COP. And that's very much the first time that it's happening at that scale. And I think for us, we realized that, like, if education people keep talking to education people, it's not going to go so far. So we really have to reach out to the climate community and have them understand that investing into sustainable education makes a difference when they want to advance their own climate goals. So that was very much what we were expecting. And so basically building an alliance that goes beyond the education sector itself, because education is really at the foundation of so many things, including economies, of course, that are greener. And maybe just to react a little bit on the point that was raised just before, and it's not completely related, but we've been also, as we were researching the question, identifying that there is a big toll of climate change on mental health of the learners and the teachers. And so in a way, it's also related that, in the curriculum, we also need to ask the question of mental health and socio-emotional skills, including as anger management, living in a community, living together, etc., to rebuild that sense of community. And that was a very clear finding from our initial work. When it comes to the point that I didn't have a chance to present, We have KICS, which is our evidence arm at the GPE. It's knowledge, innovation, and exchange. So we do finance research grants. And India and Indian partners are absolutely welcome to compete for those grants, but there's different windows. Climate is not one of them, but we're thinking about having something around climate. But we also have dissemination platforms of knowledge. We call them the KICS hubs, and they're located at regional level. And there is one for the Asian and Pacific area. And that's probably where I would actually suggest that there are some linkages, because you don't need to be a GP country to be part of that regional hub, which is entirely devoted to knowledge and evidence, and making that bridge that is often very difficult to make between evidence and policy change and implementation results. So, I mean, in my presentation, I have put some websites, but also like contact names. So that's something you can take forward if you want to continue that discussion, and how we can also benefit from India's experience into working that nexus of education and climate. And sorry for curriculum, sorry Radhika, for curriculum, when we were researching things, and that also speaks for the social emotional aspects of the discussion. It's we had kind of a very heated discussion with some of the bigger partners about foundational learning. They wanted that to be exclusively on literacy and numeracy, and excluding social-emotional skills. And we were saying there is no dichotomy between literacy, numeracy, and social-emotional skills, because social-emotional skills are being taught when you do work on literacy and numeracy with your children. And the same is true with climate, not climate like as a topic per se, but using climate as experiences on which you can teach literacy and numeracy, for instance. Sorry, thank you.
All very good responses. Thank you, Rafael. I just want to add that at COP, first question, I definitely very positive, I think, treatment of climate education, yeah, and then not only giving this earlier on, it's so important to do this, look at this migration, look at this, all the disasters happening, this, that, but this time really focusing on what has worked on the ground, giving country examples. I think many panels were devoted on that. So I think that was something very quick, because it was just a few years back that people were focusing on, and then we had focusing on climate education, and then COVID happened, and suddenly at this COP we are seeing already all sorts of frameworks and discussions and country-led discussions going on, maybe led by UNESCO, UNICEF, and others. So I think that's something that I think is moving along very fast. I guess personally, I feel when we use this word climate, I don't somehow, I feel that I've also used it, climate education. I feel that it misses out on a big opportunity that we are sitting on, because what is climate? It's just the environment side of it. Where does the sustainable development go? You cannot deal with just climate without discussing governance, without discussing the social goals, health and education goals, without discussing the environment. All the four pillars of sustainable development are there, and suddenly climate is all there because of all the disasters and all the other things that are prevailing. And I think if we just focus on climate education, again we will miss out on using civics education, which is currently, and the way I had worked on civics education was very much learning about India's, whatever, how does democracy work, and other things which can be a tool for also aiding sustainable development and also doing other things. And how can we ask our local MLAs or municipal corporations to be much more proactive and have that sustainability goal in your district, or how can students be more proactive? So I feel that angle of sustainable development is somehow not taken seriously. And what is climate? Like, I am a 1984 Bhopal gas tragedy survivor. Why are we not talking about man-made, human-made disasters? That was not climate, but that was environmental injustice when the word was not even coined in 1984. Why are we not discussing we shouldn't have no more Bhopals? We have completely forgotten about that disaster. So where then again climate? That's not climate. That's us human beings that cause that disaster. So that includes governance and other things. So I think it's half discussion. Then we will be discussing science that will do climate education, and we'll be happy that now we are doing climate education. So for taking New Jersey's example, I think it was not done in like 1 year. It was a big push by the first lady, and then she created a committee. This community not only was the schools, but also environmental, policy people, community related, other leaders. So it became much more of a spillover from schools and communities and everyone together. So I think that was a big plus, that it was not just one school, schools doing it, and it took years. And I think even now teachers are being trained. It's a slow process. The standards were being mapped and scope and sequences were mapped. So I think there is no shortcut, even if the top, it was a very top down, here is the bomb, now deal with it. So everyone then said, okay, now let's do something. And then it was still faster than if it is grounds up, because teachers have to build collectives and all of that. But it is still going, and I don't know whether it is it's there, it's in motion, and there are many teachers who are going. Funding is also allotted for teacher training, and that funding is sometimes weak, sometimes more lesson plans need to be developed. So it is still a struggle, but at least there is a policy, and now everyone needs to work on that policy. And in the New Jersey teachers science conventions, this is discussed as a topic on where you are, what is the progress, and teachers get inspiration from each other's district. So I can't say it's like done and it was easy and it was not an extra work. I think it's still considered quite a bit of work, but it's stretched out and into number of years, and it's kind of still in the works, Sanjita.
Radhika, I have a question to you. You used words like compassion, kindness, empathy, all of it in your presentation. I think it is a great challenge to include these aspects in a regular school curriculum, especially in India. And as you rightly said, it is hijacked by spirituality or religion. So can you share some models of the curriculum that integrated these into the school education, and what are your suggestions on it?
So just one example from New Jersey, there is this, SEL is also integrated across all subjects. That is also a policy. And now climate education is also integrated across all subjects. But the problem is that the two standards are not talking to each other. We are trying to integrate this group here into the curriculum, but SEL and climate are still disconnected, and that's why my research. So I don't have any great examples here, but I think maybe one example is celebrating. In my town, we celebrated this 100-year-old elm. So someone wrote a poetry, someone wrote something else, and we just celebrated a birthday of a 100-year-old tree. So I think giving that tree, and I think this is so easily done in India, because I think we are all very emotional people, and we are all very, I guess, connected to communities, and more connected versus in the US. Unfortunately, in the US, we are very individualized. And so it is much easier done in India, where things can be incorporated in the community aspect and much more connected and much more holistic. So I think that students were also really happy to, now they have a different perspective when they see this tree. So it can be easily done, and probably in all our classes there may be some elements of that may be already happening in elementary grades, in primary schools. But how do we highlight those, and how do we bring it up, and how do we make that as like a norm that can be shared with other teachers, other schools? I think that might be a big challenge.
Yeah, I guess there are no more questions and we can close the session. Thank you, Radhika and Raphael, for that enriching presentation and also the discussion. Thank you so much. So we will close.
My honor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting us.